Nelson Mandela's election as president was supposed to banish apartheid. Social reformers were inspired to believe that lessons could be learnt from South Africa's history in the making. But the Battle of Hout Bay tells us that the economics of apartheid still thrives in South Africa.
I call it economic apartheid because the system of land ownership divides the population. Apartheid was based on race originally here in South Africa, but as a means of dividing the people, dispossessing them from their traditional rights to possess land. The white settlers came and they needed to replace the populations so that they could acquire the land. That is economic apartheid. That economic apartheid system is not only here in South Africa, but everywhere around the world. We have it in Britain. It's called the class system. The economic apartheid in the United States is color-coded, but the ultimate effect is people cannot afford to acquire the homes they need to start their families or to get the jobs they need to support their families. That drives people to crime, to desperate measures that includes squatting on the sites on the side of a hill overlooking a beautiful harbour.
Cameraman Dan Calderwood of News 24 witnessed armed police caught in the middle of a civil struggle over land.
The white residents are campaigning to have them removed. They don't want their property values reduced by illegal shantytowns up the hillside. But where are these people to relocate to? There is no land available at a price they can afford where there are jobs. And that's why people have to take desperate measures, and they say they will resist the attempts by the police and the politicians to remove them forcibly.
Land has been at the heart of the conflict ever since white settlers conquered the territories of the tribes.
You see, if you took that side of the valley, from right where we stay, all along the mountains, you'll see another type of invasion. All foreigners, but because of richness, they could have our land. As a kid, I was removed from the valley in 1965, brought down to this side because of Group Areas Act implemented by the NP government. Today, when we address the problem, they say we are the invaders.
Majority rule alone could not solve disputes over land.
But me and all my people around me, we are all the children from the valley up there. And if you look at the valley today, they have the right to invade the mountains. On this side of the mountain, there's only 4 people owning a full mountain. There's thousands of people here own nothing. If you look on that side of the mountains are invaded halfway up the mountain. But because of their money, because of their wealth, they doesn't call it invasion, they just call it private land. But as indigenous Aboriginal people, we call it invasion of our land, our ancestral land.
The ANC government has failed to develop a land policy that meets everyone's needs.
So what we actually want is a land redress, a land reform, and a land claim policy to be practiced in Hout Bay amongst Aboriginal peoples. With any kind of service, our education system is down the drain, our welfare system is down the drain, our housing system is down the drain, our job creation system is all other systems failed the Aboriginal children of Hout Bay. My whole land are invaded. Foreigners from abroad, foreigners from up Africa. We the indigenous have no say, no right, nothing. We live like dogs in our own homeland, which is something no longer we will tolerate. As me and my brothers gather today to give you people across the world this report, we are not going to be pushed around no more.
Hout Bay opens out into the warm waters of the Indian Ocean. At stake in the struggle to own the mountain is the yachting lifestyles of affluent residents in the suburbs that ring the harbour.
What we want is our land, our indigenous rights, our resources of our land, the richness of our land, anything that belongs to the Khoi, which is the whole of Hout Bay, belong to Khoi people.
Throughout South Africa, frustration with the lack of progress has boiled over into violent riots.
So enough is enough. Government must intervene, government must come with a better solution and tell them, okay guys, we can sit down and talk and discuss the matters out, but no structures must be removed from this mountain. Enough is enough. This mountain belongs to us. This mountain belongs to our people. Not to the white people, to our people.
Illegal settlements are built because people cannot afford to buy land.
The reason why people are staying illegally is because of there's no houses for the people. And people are staying here since they was born. They stay here. So there's no other alternative way. Just to come and make a plan for themselves, to put a roof on their heads and so forth. They've got kids, they've got youth around here, and there's no other way. There's no electricity, there's no water, there's no toilets even, but they still living up here. But now the Premier of the Western Cape decided that they want to come and demolish this on Monday.
Now the people decide to move out of their family houses that are too small to stay in. They also want families of their own. They decide to move here over the sloot, put up structures for themselves. Now it's a problem. Why don't they come up with a solution?
There can be no happy future for the children of South Africa without jobs. Nearly 40% of working people are unemployed, so they cannot buy homes in the residential suburbs. Peter Meakin is a Cape Town land reformer who says there is a solution to South Africa's crisis. That solution was not part of the deal between Nelson Mandela and F.W. de Klerk. Nor did Archbishop Desmond Tutu's Commission on Reconciliation consider it as a way to unite the people of the Rainbow Nation.
All the post-colonial countries have gone through this process where you take over power, a new political elite takes over. It does not transform the economy and society and how wealth is organized. It simply continues to run things as they were run before. I think this is the key problem.
The public collection of the rents of land would make it possible to abolish the bad taxes that are barriers to prosperity.
This is Pretoria, South Africa. Underneath these buildings and all the other towns and cities in the country, there are enough land rents to pay for all of the income taxes which we are now charged.
And then there is the gold and platinum buried beneath the ground.
All of the minerals and precious metals like gold and silver and platinum in South Africa are owned by the people. The trouble is that the royalties are not always collected. They're only paid when the ores are taken out of the ground. So there are situations when the miners say, well, it's no point in mining these stones. Let's keep them and speculate on them.
Johannesburg author Stephen Meintjes believes tax reform would bring harmony to this multiracial society.
In our view, the rents from land and mineral sources would be over 500 billion. In other words, at least 80% of the current budget. And that's without taking into account the beneficial effect on the economy of the switch in tax. The reason why South Africa needs this reform is because we have huge variation in land values and productivity. Only 15% of the surface area of the country is arable, and 2/3 is mere grasslands and grazing lands, and yet because of the very high levels of taxation, economic activity in most of our rural areas is very, very heavily penalized, and a lot of our rural towns are becoming derelict. And by the same token, of course, the government is under collecting on the huge rentals in our major metropolitan areas. And in our mining jurisdiction, there's great confusion, as almost as great as in Australia, because there's haphazard allocation of mining rights. We proposed a system whereby sought-after prospecting rights in the first instance would be auctioned, and then as regards mining operations, We have a simple variable profits formula which is actually well established in the South African gold mining industry for nearly 100 years, whereby the richer mines and shallower mines pay a higher rate of tax, and more marginal mines pay much lower, and in some cases no tax at all. This system automatically caters for commodity booms and slumps, and there's no need for governments to chase after companies' mines with windfall taxes in boom times or bail them out in bad times. The formula does that for you. The consequences of not adopting this reform are that the economy becomes hostage to a lot of increasingly vociferous populist suggestions for nationalization of the mines and nationalization of all sorts of, and farming land, and these would have dire consequences because, as we've seen, not only in South Africa but elsewhere in the world, state-owned enterprises very often are highly inefficient. The impact on unemployment would be dramatic because at the moment we have in effect very high taxes on labour. Not only do we have quite a rigid regulatory labour system, but in effect VAT, for example, 16%, 14% rather, is a tax on labour, and we believe that there would be enormous incentive under our proposals. For example, industry in the rural areas, industries there would pay next to no tax. The land rents there would be very, very low. Even in the industrial areas, in the metropolitan areas, land rents would, on our calculations, entail manufacturing industry paying a much lower rate to the fiscus than the present rates of tax.
South Africa could be the continent's powerhouse for prosperity. That prospect hangs in the balance.
Our parliament in South Africa could pass legislation which would liberate everybody from the chains of apartheid. There are literally millions of people out there still without land, still hungry, still poor, and it just takes one small change to the manner in which they take up the revenue from the people of South Africa. That changes that we should change to one single land tax and do away with all other taxes.